Today I've got a guy by the name of Lawrence Armstrong. He's been in Cleveland since he was 7 years old. He's the president of the NAACP. And I'm looking forward to finding out exactly what they do. And I'm not that familiar with it. It's going to be a great show. So Lawrence, you're like me. You're a little hard to get a hold of. You're busy, aren't you?
Always. And it's, maybe I'm kind of a guy that believes just get the work done. Sit around talking about it doesn't really accomplish much. Let's get out here and keep moving and get the work done.
So do you, when you're set out to do something, is there a plan, or is it just more of a, how would you describe it? I mean, you sit down and say, okay, here's my plan.
I start off every day with a plan, and I tell everyone, if you think that that your plan is going to be executed to the way that you want it to be, just ask God, and He'll direct you in another path all the time. So I say that is because we have plans and we have an agenda to go by, and unfortunately, there's things that come up that are unpreventable that you have to address at times, and it takes you off that path, and you have to redirect and kind of adjust.
You know, that's a talent, being able to redirect and come back to what you were doing. Because you can get sidetracked, and just some people can't get back on it till like the next day.
Well, now it happens sometimes, but the thing about it is that we have to kind of prioritize and realize that we can only do what we can do, and just like not try to be the superheroes. And someone else's urgency doesn't make it your priority. And
well, they'll make it seem like it, won't they?
Oh yeah. And that's the key to managing your time, to make sure you stay on task. Because I have to give credit first and foremost to my beautiful wife of 18 years. She has really helped me to become more focused, more organized. And we met in both being involved in the NAACP. She was the president of the Chattanooga NAACP, and I was president of the Bradley County NAACP. And so that's how we started dating, and we ended up getting engaged and got married. And so that was back in 2005. And so I'm blessed to say that, you know, through our partnership and working and having someone that understands what this work is all about is truly a blessing. And so that's the first and foremost, like, my foundation as to how to succeed in this environment and navigate these waters in the work of the NAACP. Now, when you say you don't know much about the NAACP, I first like to tell everyone I'm not going to insult anyone's intelligence. You can go out and go online and Google and pull up the website, but it's been around since 1909. It's a civil rights organization.
Golly.
Yes, sir.
1909.
It's been around since 1909 is when it was founded. The National Association for Colored People initiatives, and first started off is to fight against civil rights, slavery, the unjust hangings, voting rights. Those are one of the main issues, as we have fought for many, many, many years, is civil rights education. And I always tell people some things, just because things don't appear to be right, don't mean they're against the law. And so you have to navigate an unjust. So something could be morally or ethically not right, but doesn't make it against the law.
Well, that's the truth.
And so you have to adjust and help people to understand, is it something that violated your constitutional rights, or did it break a law, or is it just something you feel that should have been done different, or they should have had a different approach? And those are the kind of things you got to help people to navigate.
On the courthouse square at 30 2nd Street is the law firm of Logan Thompson Law. Since 1965, they have served the legal needs for the good citizens of Cleveland, Bradley County. If you've got a problem, they're no problem. Give them a call.
In 1909, what was the status of the African Americans at that time? 'Cause that was prior to the car, really, right?
So 1909, back, and it's real interesting, and I say this is because a lot of people don't understand the unjust that was taking place during that time. Think about it like this: the people that had the opportunity of making a difference were the influential people that had the influence. And so you have to understand it was brought together. You had the influential Edward D. Du Bois. You had a lot of prominent Caucasian folks that all worked together to establish the organization. So the misleading information is a lot of people will always think that the NAACP was founded and was only for black people. And that's the biggest misconception that anyone can ever have. And I say that is because when it was founded, it was to fight for all people. Yes, people of color were the ones being done that we were fighting for initially on, and then as time has changed and then we start making certain accomplishment, that narrative, the problems start growing and growing, and you just got things spread across that you had to adjust. And so I say that is think about, coming back from the war, not being able to find a job as a black man. Just think about the unequal pay. Think about not being able to vote and being, paying taxes and not having the right to vote. Think about all the things that when I say that now there are certain provisions that are put in place to make sure certain things aren't done. And now these same provisions that were put in place to make sure that we don't repeat history are now being undone. And so that's the whole purpose and reasoning on why you need organizations like the NAACP to stand up and be the conscience of the nation. It's because you want to make sure people understand and hold true to making sure that we're all being treated equal and fairly.
And it's not just an organization for the African Americans. It's an organization to help stand up for
all people.
For all people.
Correct.
Because if you stand up for one, you're actually standing up for all, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. So I say that is because I tell people, you can look at it on this foundation. I guess it was probably based a lot around race. And when you look around to today's time, you say, well, what is the NAACP fighting for now? A lot of people feel like, blacks has just as many rights as whites and Hispanics or any other culture. So why is this organization really relevant? And I say to people all the time, if you think that the playing field is fair, I said, look across the board, look out in this community, and why is one side of town has more influential than the other? You can go and look and search these blight areas. Who's fighting for these folks? Why are these folks not getting the same treatment as people on the north end of town? Who's fighting for them? Who's saying and making sure that things going to be equal?
And if it wasn't for the NAACP, who is it?
That's a fair statement. Mm-hmm. And I say there's a lot of organizations, and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of organizations that mean well and they work directly with certain initiatives. And unfortunately, the initiatives in the NAACP are so broad because it can go from labor disputes, from discrimination in labor force. It can go from, as we were talking about, certain laws, certain unjust laws or certain behaviors being treated within our public system, whether it be education, whether it be law enforcement, whether it be health. Like I said, our challenges we have to deal with everything that under the sun. Like when nobody else knows who to call, they call the NAACP. I've had folks, and again, this is all ethnicities and nationalities. It's no discrimination amongst who people are going to be done wrong to. And I like to always tell people it's more about the haves and have-nots, because whether people realize it or not, poor whites have more challenges than poor blacks, and they're more discriminated against whether anybody rather realize it or not.
I realize that too. They are discriminated against, the poor whites, some of the real poor whites, and maybe they don't have as much of a voice. But what you're saying is NAACP is their voice.
Correct. NAACP is a voice for all people, and the problem is because it depends on who's telling the narrative. Because think about it, just like you here, you developed and you created a podcast to get to show a different side of things, because certain things in certain media platforms may not want to tell certain stories. So they'll edit and they'll clip and only show certain portions of things just to change the narrative or put the narrative out there on what they want people to perceive. So until people start telling their own story and start getting out and getting involved and getting engaged to see what the bigger pictures are, that's the only way people gonna really know the difference.
Would you say the NAACP is trying to fix stuff on the front end that have been caused on the back end, whereas some of these organizations are to help people that are already in the bad positions, but y'all are trying to help set policies and procedures that make it equal for all?
Correct, absolutely.
Is that a good way to put it?
Absolutely, but unfortunately, we're on both ends. I'd like to tell people we working to try to be proactive and be preventive, but most of the time, I have to say that we have just as much on the back end that we're reacting to, because certain things have taken place. Because let's face it, it's just like any other group, church, or any other functionality. You have a handful of people doing the work of many. We have a lot of people to come out, be in attendance, but how many people are actually going to help clean up and get the work done?
Yeah, after church is over, there's only a few people fixing those communion cups, isn't there? You ever notice that?
That's exactly right. And then even after communion is done, there's only a few people going around cleaning up after everybody's leave. So I tell people all the time, and that is if you want to get a clear picture of the work in the NAACP, I always tell people, think about ever going to a gala. You put on a nice tuxedo, you go out, and you have a great time. And you never think about all the people behind the scenes. And I say, somebody had to prepare that place. Somebody came in, they set up the tables, they washed those dishes.
Reserve the location.
And I mean, there's a lot of work that went in behind the scene. Were those people treated fairly? Does anybody ever think about them?
They never do.
Even the people that's got to come back and clean it up. How many times you travel or you go to a hotel, or a lot of people take so many things for granted, but do we ever think about, are these people really being taken? What is the cost for my enjoyment? What are they suffering? What is it costing them for me to have my enjoyment? We never think about that.
Why do you call it the NAACP and I call it the NAACP?
Well,
that's different. And I've never heard.
Well, the reason why I emphasize NAACP is because when you say NAACP, a lot of people they mispronounce it and they think you're saying NWACP.
So it's just clarification.
It's just a clarification.
NAACP.
And so the reason why I always say NAACP is because when I say NAACP, some people misunderstand that to say W instead of
like
A.
DWAC or something.
Yes. Yes. So that's why when I say it, and again, I'm more intentional about it now, because in the past, in saying NAACP, that was the misunderstanding.
So you've had that issue before, too.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Now let me ask you this: you've been here in Cleveland since you're 7, or off and on?
So off and on. So I used to come here and visit during the summer times. I actually graduated from Cleveland High School and came and attended Cleveland High School my senior year of high school, the last 3 months. And so after I graduated high school and went back to New Jersey, and I stayed there for a couple of years. I came back here in end of 1989, beginning of 1990 is when I took up permanent residence here in Cleveland. My dad was remarried, my stepmom, and my stepfamily, we're all very close. And so I always tell everyone, Cleveland is home for me.
Could you have chose New Jersey at that time?
I could have. My mom was still living in New Jersey. I have all my family on my mother's side I have a brother still lives in New Jersey.
Was that a hard decision for you?
Absolutely not. As a child, coming here to visit and all the things that I've seen that we weren't privy to, and I use the recreation centers as an example. Growing up in an inner city and coming from not having all the things that are provided here, I seen Cleveland as one of the greatest places that lives on earth. There were kids going to the recreation center. They played sports. They had activities going on. They had all the things that what life was really all about in the middle class if you would live, for a middle class family. And so growing up in the inner cities, those things we weren't exposed to. We didn't have playgrounds or recreation centers to go and attend and hang out at, or safe houses or safe places to go and do. So you just made your own way. And so it was a little bit different.
Wonder why Cleveland was so. Cleveland, even back then in the '90s, was somewhat of a safe zone for a minority, I guess you'd say.
So now I say it's a safe zone for a child. Now, I can't speak on adult minorities during that time. And the reason I say that, when I say it's a safe zone as a child, is because when you come to, it's just like a family now. I brag because I feel like we have an excellent community that watches out for one another. I don't see some of the challenges that a lot of other small cities have faced that are growing at our capacity. Yes, we have challenges, but I think we're doing a great job at some of the things we're doing, and we just got to work together. And I think that's where we have a better relationship than most, because I found the community here really are trying to work together more than a lot of other communities.
Boy, it's a good testament for Cleveland, isn't it? Really?
It very is, very much so. And I say that because I don't want to paint the pictures like everything is always roses.
Sure, no.
It's just like marriage. We love our spouses and we enjoy them, but we have some bad days there too.
Well, do we?
So the key to it is, it's just like I tell everyone, is that we got to find a way to find commonality to work together. And how do we bridge those roads? And the biggest thing about any relationship is communication. And when you have lack of communication, that's where so many misunderstandings and things take place, because what you don't know, you'll make up.
Well, that's an interesting statement. What you don't know, you'll make up. Will your mind perceive it some way?
Because the perception, again, one's perception is their perception. You can't change that until after the dialogue. But if you have dialogue beforehand, at least they would have a better understanding. You can help them to understand where you were truly with each other.
That's one of the most profound statements I've heard in a long time. Now say it again.
What people don't know,
What you don't know,
they'll make up.
they'll make up. That's cognitive bias working, I guess, isn't it? Seeing things as you...
So I say this too. Think about this. How many of you recognize our unconscious bias?
I don't believe any of us do.
And that's fair. That's just humanity.
Yeah.
So that's fair. So I say this to say, when it comes down to unconscious bias, several years ago, I was working with a group of young teenagers and different nationalities, and one of the things I asked them to talk about was, what are your unconscious bias? And these group of teenagers were high school students that I was talking to, and they were so impressive to me because their mindset and where they were identifying things that as adults that we would never be able to own up to. They talked about their perception of being privileged, being just not associating with certain class of people or race of people or what have you. They were owning as young teenagers the things that they felt like they should probably change before they go to college. And it was very impressive to me because they understood and they recognized it and were willing to talk about it and attempt at the time to do something about it. As adults, we struggle with that. Our pride gets in the way. Mm-hmm. How many adults are willing to say we made a mistake?
And we've had years of cognitive dissonance where we've been supporting our biases, that it's just almost impossible to change. I always felt like if somebody identified their own cognitive bias, you couldn't know if you are. You just know you are. You just don't know where it's at.
So it's funny you made the comment when you said it's almost impossible to change. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing when I talk about this community, is because the things that I find that are impossible is the things that I'm challenging folks the most. Because we live in one of the strongest faith-based community, and we lack more faith than anything. Because I always tell anyone that if we really believe and we trust and have faith, then how can we be a person who has so much lack of hope? Excuse me. And I say that is because how can we sit back and say we believe in God, we trust in Him, we have our faith in Him, and we believe in Him, but I want to control this. I want to control the outcome.
Boy, people really have a hard time not trying to control that and leaving it in God's hands. And I may be one of the worst.
I mean, we all have it. I mean, it's a part of being human. We all have it, and that's where I say, having real conversations about it is the things that we really got to address the most. We turn things. I tell people all the time. We worry about. I mean, and again, we want to be good stewards of finances and different things to make sure. Want to plan for retirement. Want to plan to make sure that if the car breaks down, we got some reserves to be able to get it fixed. And so those are the basics. What I call principle 101 of budgeting. But when I talk about faith and really stepping out and doing things and relying on God to make a way, and I'm talking about just how did this strong faith-based community where we have a church on every corner, and look at our homeless population.
I haven't quite figured that one out. That's almost a new one, isn't it?
Listen, there's no way 25 years ago when the Church of God Assembly was coming here that you can say that any of us here would ever believe that there would be a homeless person in Cleveland, Tennessee.
Maybe 15 years ago. Am I right?
That's correct.
We had the one guy that stayed at the courthouse and maybe one or two other people.
Right.
But now, I mean, I don't understand it.
So, and I say this, and again, not pointing fingers or anything like that. I don't have all the answers. I'm just saying we can identify the challenges we see in our community. I guess my plea is, what are we doing about it?
I don't know. That's almost like they don't. It's almost like some of the problems we have, they just almost don't see it or ignore it or something. I mean, the other night I had to get up and go to the gas station over here on Paul Huff. Good community, good area. And it was like at 12 o'clock at night, and you would not believe the homeless people surrounding that. It was like watching a movie. Like, you know, those movies they say what comes out at night. It was like the Walking Dead or something. It was, I don't know. I don't know anybody that's trying to work on it.
Again, why not?
Salvation Army.
But I'm saying, again, should that not be of all our interests?
It should be.
If we call ourselves Christians and we're worried about our fellow man, we're supposed to love our fellow man, and we're supposed to be looking out for our brethren, shouldn't we be trying to address these issues? All of us, in some way, fashion, or form?
We should.
Should it's not? I mean, I just when I see or we identify problems, I'm just wondering who's working on trying to fix it.
Yeah, here I am saying I've identified the problem, and I'm saying they should do something about it. I'm doing the same thing right now we're talking about, aren't I? Really?
Well, okay. So, and I say this is just the human nature is until it affects me and my house, I don't really get involved with it. And that's the common, that's a common phrase within the community. Yeah. And a lot of people don't see that. But until it affects a person and personally, until it really affects someone personally, they don't feel like they should be engaged.
I've heard people say, I can't see it from my house. I don't know what that means other than I don't care.
That's pretty much it.
Now, what would you describe the NAA? Well, describe. So if I say describe to me how the blacks were in 1909 in relation to the NAACP, you're saying you're connecting these things that's not exactly connected. You're saying I should be saying, how was minority relationships in 1909?
So, as you're well aware, 1909, the relationships with the predominantly white community and minorities, there was no relationship.
Blacks couldn't vote.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. So, everything that we're talking about, you couldn't even, I mean, again, we're talking about not being able to sit at the same tables, not being able to attend the same schools.
That's right.
I mean, let's talk about the 100%.
Separate bathrooms.
Separate but equal. And so that's what everybody believed back then. So you're talking in 1909, you're talking about still fresh. In some parts of this country, there was still slavery. And so I say that is because even up until the last 50 years, we still had some rules and some laws on the book right here in even Bradley County that were still some old laws from the slavery days that had to be changed.
Don't you think that during World War II, and I'm bad at history, but don't you think that World War II, when the blacks were helping them fight the war, that the blacks and whites sitting fighting on the same team might have been as big of a thing to help bring it together as anything?
So I say it probably should have, but from the black man's experience is that I'm only good as long as I'm helping you that nobody else sees it.
But I mean, the guy that was actually fighting with him,
So
he started bringing these good thoughts and good views home with him, and it maybe propelled it later on down the line.
So think about it like this. So we developed this relationship. We fighting in this war. We developed this relationship, and we really start to lean into one another and start to get a better understanding of each other. What happens when this war is over?
Well, that's what happened. It was over, and it went back to sort of the way it was.
So why did it not change? That's the point that we're having this conversation. Yeah. So in that particular situation, from my perspective, I know that nothing changes. It's just like when I sit back, there's a lot of people in this town, they see and they want to have one-on-one conversations, and they'll be transparent on some things, but then when they get out and they're surrounding around their peers, they act like those conversations never take place, and they never stand on the principalities that they talk on in private. That's where the challenges come from. So I need men to be men, like stand up and be the same man out in public that you were behind closed doors. Don't say something to me, but be afraid to stand in your pulpit and say the same thing.
That's right.
Don't be afraid to stand behind the bench and say the same thing. Like, say it, be consistent in your message. And then I think as a community as a whole, I think we'll all grow.
When you think of the NAACP, do you think of it as more of a national concern, or is your main focus Bradley County in NAACP?
It's both. I say that is because now I can only focus on Bradley County and NAACP. But the initiatives are pretty much the same across the board, across the country. And
but you feel like your job is here.
Bradley County.
You're not really concerned with tomorrow helping NAACP Sweetwater. You're Bradley County.
No.
I mean, you're.
So let me help you out. Yesterday, we met as Tennessee State Conference, NAACP. We met here in Bradley County at Cleveland State Community College. So all the presidents and different members of NAACP in the state of Tennessee were here in Bradley County yesterday for our bi-monthly meeting. And what we do is we hold bi-monthly meetings across the state to where we come together and we learn what are some of the initiatives that others are going through, what are some of the state concerns. Just this is where we come together and try to build cohesiveness to see what we can do to help one another. So now, during these meetings, as we come together, we take these resources, we learn what additional resources are here to help one another, and then we pull those in as needed. So if I have an initiative in Bradley County, Tennessee, that someone from Knoxville can come down, or Chattanooga or Johnson City, that they can come in and they have this attorney or they have someone in the health field to speak on different topics, and we need to pull those resources together and use those expertise, we have that opportunity to do so. And so I say that is because each community, we have the same issues, just some are more higher in priority than others.
What do you see? Do you see anything on the state that's coming down that's looking positive as far as any laws or any or negative?
Well,
that they're talking about or anything?
Right now, as a society, there's all the things that were fought for that are being undone is a concern.
Now, say that. Give me an example of something that's being undone.
One of the recent laws that came through, and I'm talking about the state of Tennessee, and it talks about the divisive concept. And just reading from the bill, the HB 2670, and it was by House Member C. Sexton. Education Higher, as enacted, prohibits a public institution of higher education from taking certain actions with regard to divisive concepts and the ideologies or political viewpoints of students and employees, enacts other related provision. Again, this is Senate Bill 2290 in the Tennessee General Assembly. This particular bill took away some of the things, and I'll use here locally. Cleveland State Community College have always been the champion and have always organized our Martin Luther King Day parade. And they used to have a student government association where they, minority affairs, different things. All those things, because of the Tennessee Board of Regencies, decided, said, this bill passed, you guys can no longer do these things. All right. So now, for whatever reason, someone chose to introduce this bill and they had a different perception of it and thought it didn't have any value and they wanted things to go a different way. However, the things that it impacted and affected, you taking away a resource that I once had to depend on and rely on, to work with, to help organize and structure and educate others on why this day was even important in the first place.
So now you're having to refight this battle, I guess, in a sense, right?
Correct. So now we're going back, recreating the wheel. We've already had, that was one accomplishment we accomplished. We thought we got past it, and it was something that we can put on the back burner.
Forget about
that.
Guess
what? We're right back at it again.
Wonder who was behind that.
Well, the
who even has time for that?
So
you know what I'm saying?
Here's my point.
It wasn't hurting anybody to do it.
But those are the things that take place every day. Every day.
And if you didn't have an organization like the NAACP, then they just...
the key to it is educating the community, educating society on these laws and things that are being transpired. Because other than sitting down with me today, this was nothing that really was important to you at all.
Had no clue.
No clue.
No clue.
These type of laws and things that are taking place happen every day.
And why didn't they ask me what I wanted to do or have some kind of a referendum on the books?
Because guess what? You voted to put
whoever it is.
So they represent, they vote the way, because guess what? No one's there's no accountability card. There's no report card. We don't have a report card of the representative that we voted in.
If we had it, we wouldn't read it. We'd just see the ad on TV and decide whether or not we liked his smile.
And people
isn't that crazy?
Like I said, there is no accountabilities. This is why it's important for us to take voting seriously. And that's why we're real big on voter education, helping people to understand. Think about it like this, and you can Google it and pull it up, but just in Bradley County, Tennessee alone, how many people do you think live in Bradley County, Tennessee?
Maybe 120, I'm just guessing.
Okay, so out of that 120,000, let's just say, roughly, we got 80,000 adults in Bradley County, Tennessee. How many do you think would be a good number just to come out and vote in a national election?
Oh God, it's so embarrassing. Because I had that election girl here. It was and I think Bradley County was high on the average. So it was like what, 10% or 12%?
And that's what I'm getting at. The point that I'm making is you have a handful of people that are only voting, and they're making majority of decisions that impact so many.
Can you imagine somebody in World War II or I or the Patriotic War, and they're sitting behind the log and they're shooting and they're about to get shot and they're saying, I've got to do this for the rights of my grandkids to be able to vote. And they're giving their life. They're scared to death. They're going to get shot. They're going to die young. And the grandkids or whoever just says, it was raining that day. Can you imagine that?
Listen, I can tell you there's people, and again, I tell people this because it's not that we're so far removed. There's still people that's living in this county today that didn't have the right to vote. And that they stand.
Golly.
There's still people living today.
I guess that's right.
Think about it. There's
If they're
still people-
if they're 95-ish or something.
Think about it. There's still people that's living today that were born and didn't have the right to vote.
Now, will those people likely vote if they have to crawl to the polls?
Absolutely.
If they
These
have
people
to,
are on their deathbed and will make sure they get their vote in.
that's the difference between that.
Because they understood what it took to get
Right.
it. It's no different than, and I say this is because it's no different than whether you make a child work for something and earn it, or you just continue to give a child something. The one that works for it and earn it is going to appreciate it more because they understand the value and know what it took to get
It's
it.
not just money, it's the rights to vote. And women didn't have a right to vote till what, 19 something.
So think
Here.
about it like this, and this is why I always tell people this: when you say women didn't have the right to vote, how do you think that? What do you think was the driving mechanism behind it? And I have my own perception, but I just wanted to hear.
Well, originally, the right to vote went with property rights, I think. If you owned property, you had the right to vote. Then it went to, and that's the only thing I know, that women didn't technically own property at the time, but
So as you say, women didn't have the right to vote. That came on the heels of blacks fighting for the right to vote.
maybe a part of the NAACP.
So the point that I'm
The
making
efforts.
is, think about it, and this is why I want that to be cleared up, is because women earned the rights to vote off of the backs of blacks having the right to vote.
That's a good point.
So when people say that, and it's real, we can segregate it to say women, but it's really blacks didn't have the right to vote. So women were incorporated into this because, again, this was what challenged and helped everybody to move the needle to get this passed. So it wasn't just about blacks having the right to vote. It was all being able to have the right to vote. And
Now-
it goes back to same thing when we want to talk about fair wages and things of that nature. Folks would rather, and again, black men came into the workforce there to make the same as white men. And the only reason that we even had the minimum wage or anything, all the laws that are put in place is because someone said it's better to do this than to do that. I'd rather for the black man to come in here and work next to me than to have these white women or black women come in here next to me. I'm working in this the foundry. I don't want this woman, I don't have to carry this woman. She's not gonna be able to lift this. So let's just let the black man come in here and do this. And I don't want these women coming in here and doing this. So those were stepping stones that I tell people all the time, that through history, as you look at it, it was always selecting the best of the, picking and choosing and saying, which one of these would I rather have? If I gotta have one, I really don't want none of them. But if I gotta have one, I guess I'll take this one.
What do you think is the biggest challenge today for a minority person today? What would be the biggest challenge? Would it be, it's not voting, it's not worrying about slavery.
So,
Although,
so the two things you just mentioned, this is where I disagree. Voting is still our issue, still our problem.
but you
Because-
get to vote, right?
Depends. Let's talk about that.
Okay.
Because think about all the voting provisions that are being placed to keep you from voting. So there's still, even in 2024, we're 7 days into 2024. Think about this. Since our last election, since 2020, since the last presidential election, do you realize, and again, these are information you can Google, do you realize across this country how many laws went in place after that election?
No, I get to where I'm not
So
so much fake news out there, I just don't know.
And so when I say that is because all I'm talking about legislation. I'm not even talking
Right.
about media.
Right.
I'm just talking about legislation. Look at the legislation, all the different legislation that's been in place about voting. And just watch how many times that they're changing the whole act. Like I was talking about early voting, that initiative has changed. Different laws and requirements.
Before it was what? You can early vote,
And again, that's based on counties. It's based on counties.
but as a
It's the-
general rule, it was what? A month before? Or,
You had a 2-week period within that 30 days prior to election, and again, different counties and different.
so
communities.
that was always good, right? Early
that was
voting.
a great
If you're-
initiative. But then again, because someone said, "Hey, instead of having 2 weeks, you're only going to get a week." I mean, those are the things that I'm getting at. The things that when I say different things, being purging voters. Sometimes,
But I'm not sure if that's That's a rule for everybody, not just. How would that hurt minorities worse?
Because who's the ones that has the most challenges in getting to the poll?
Well, let's say that's true.
I'm saying, so now when we talk about minorities, what I'm saying is minorities. I'm not just looking at minorities from a race standpoint. Remember what I told you at the beginning?
Yeah, we're talking about. I'm putting poor whites as a minority.
So think about it like this: those that have not are worse off than those that have. Because look at it. Let's look at the polling places. How convenient is it for you to go and vote? How many polling places do you have in your area? And how many polling places are in the South End where the less fortunate are?
Well, how many do they need?
Let's make it fair, make it equal, make it just as equal across the board for everyone, and in that way we can have people. The first thing they'll say is cost this, and I get it. We got a budget, we have certain costs, but just make sure we put the same amount of energy and resources
per mile, per square miles, or per people,
per square mile, per people. Based on the household population because again, based on the population of that dense community, what does it reflect on what we need for those resources? Let's make sure we have them there.
You know what I always thought would have been the best thing to solve everything is for everybody that has the right to vote to have some kind of a number, and you can mail your form in anytime, 6 months before, whatever. But every person that has a right has a number, and you can check. You can check their vote, whether or not they voted. Let them mail it in. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, right?
Well,
then you wouldn't even have to have a precinct, just to have and have it postage paid.
And so, to that point, you kind of say use your Social Security number to vote.
Well, maybe not. Well.
And the only reason I asked that question is because
some don't have Social Security number.
Well, and then fraudulency. So all I'm getting at is that everything, you have so many provisions in place because just think about it like this: laws are only put in place because something created it to be in place. Something happened to make us put this in place.
All right. So let's say which would be more feasible to have it to where everybody has to have a number and they have 5 months to vote, or have multiple places to vote. I don't know which would be better.
Well, I'm not disputing the current voting policy that we have in place. I mean, the voting. I'm about the democracy and what we have in place. I'm saying let's not take it back any further steps.
I agree with you. Whatever it is.
Yeah, whatever it is, I'm willing to play by those rules. But let's not constantly keep changing the rules. That's the point that I had. It's kind of like, and I don't know how much you maybe watch sports or anything, but for me, growing up, I used to enjoy watching basketball and football all the time. Loved it. And as I've gotten older, I probably hardly ever watch it as much as I used to because they've changed the rules so much that I think about, Terry Bradshaw and some of those guys that played, and it was nothing for those guys to take a hit and keep on licking. Now, if you go in, you push that quarterback down, you're going to get that whistle blown on you.
And how you going to think in the heat of the moment? So it's almost like, why am I watching?
So I'm saying all this to say that as times change, certain things, and there's so many things that changes, but is it always for the good or is it always, because again, I understand these guys were getting concussions, they had health issues. Again, I understand all the things that were done to make these changes and put them in place because you wanted to preserve and protect people and want them to live longer and all those type of things, which is great, don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying for the sport itself, what did it do for it long term? Because it's like, now it's almost gotten to the point to where we can't find that happy medium to make it consistent and fair across the world.
And if they'll keep it the same all the time, maybe people would adjust more to it than not even knowing the rules. I don't even know if you I didn't even know it was 2 weeks and within the 30 days.
Now, I'm speaking on that. Now, today, I can say that to you. Am I speaking factual? That's what I think it is. I don't have that. That's not hardcore facts for me.
And-
I know it's a 2-week voting, early voting period. When it starts and ends, and I say that is because I know it's within that 30 days prior to the actual election.
And that's the point we're making. Neither one of us knows. And it should be easy to know, right?
Yes. If it's that important.
If it's that important, it should be a standard, easy, at least not changed from 2 years ago and that sort of thing.
And so we confuse people with all the different elections that we do have. You have primaries, you have local, you have, So again, some things are in place intentionally, and some things just happen to be that way.
Yeah, that confusion always kind of bothered me too. I don't even know. Sometimes you go to the poll and you don't know who you're voting for. How about when it says, "Do you vote for Judge so and so?" That long, I don't even know what they're saying. I usually just skip them because I don't even know.
So, do you understand? And I always tell people locally, and again, this is based on different opinions. The most important person to vote for locally in the local community, who you think most people would say?
Boy, I think they would say probably the mayor, but I don't know I don't know if he has any authority anymore. I think it's the city council probably.
So, if you ask, my personal opinion is the most important person to vote for in this community is the district attorney.
You got me there. You're exactly right.
How many people think about that?
Very few.
The reason I say that is because, again, if I have a problem, and I can say, in the city now, I'm just going to say the mayor is the most important person in the city because he has no authority.
He has veto power, I think, something like that.
He's like you said, it's very weak mayor system. So that's a different conversation.
And boy, isn't he a good mayor?
Love him. I think we have a decent city council. I think that there's some opportunities. Because how do we get to where we are? This is what I tell people all the time. I have a lot of respect for anyone that runs for office because I know it's not easy. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times we get tunnel vision. I believe in term limits. I'm a guy that believes that at some point, let's step down and pass the torch. I've been involved in Cleveland, Tennessee. In 2003, when I helped reactivate the local chapter of the local branch of the NAACP, I was president consecutively for about 3 or 4 terms from 2003 to approximately 2012-ish. No, I'm sorry, 2003 to 2014. After 2014, I wanted to give someone else a chance and allow someone else to, hey, take the reins. I want to take a break because it's overwhelming. Got family stuff going on. I just think someone else needed a break. So there was a couple other individuals from 2014 to 2019. We had 3 different people through that 6-year period. So 2019, the interest and things start to decline. And so it wasn't a lot of activity going on within the organization. And of course, we know at the end of 2019, COVID happened. And so we go into 2020 and there was so much unrest. That's when you had the George Floyd, you had the Confederate monuments, so racism in America was at an all-time high. And so here in our community, it was just as bad. And I say that is because everyone says, hey, what about the president of the NAACP? And at that time, it had became dormant and nobody was really leading as they should. And so the black clergy reached out to me and said, hey, we need you, gotta have you. And I prayed about it because this is I tell people this, what I do in the NAACP is a calling. It's a responsibility that just everyone can't do. Some people may want to do it, some people desire to do it, but everybody can't do it. And I may not be doing it well, but I'm doing it according to what I've been guided by on how I pray about it, with my movements. Mm-hmm. I try not to make it about me or make it personal. I always try to make sure what is it that we're supposed to be focusing on, what we're supposed to be doing for all people, not just individual, me as an individual.
You know, I was stopped by the police the other day. Driving down the road, ran a stop sign, supposedly, maybe I did. It's one of those ones where you stop, and it was like 40 feet from the intersection, so I probably, and you couldn't see for the dumpster next door, so I probably stopped there and didn't, 8:30 in the morning, nobody's around. It's 8:30 in the morning. So I drive down to the Burger King because I had to use the bathroom. I'm walking, getting ready to walk in. A police car pulls up behind me. Said, I just heard something. I turned around. Shoot, there's a policeman getting out of his car, walking towards me. I had no clue. And I had a guy in the car with me. And he said, "Can I see your license?" I have no clue, literally. He said, You ran that stop sign up there. I said, "Okay." He said, "Mind if I search you?" And I literally, until that point, I really didn't even, how you're not even really paying attention. I had my mind on phone calls and I was busy and everything else. So next thing I know, I'm agreeing to this Terry search, and he's patting me down. I've been in Cleveland my whole life. It's 8:30 in the morning. I'm going into the Burger King. I'm not going into the back of a liquor store or coming out of a back alley. I'm going into the Burger King. And he says, "What's in your pocket?" Golly. And funny thing, the day before on Christmas, this friend of mine had gotten me this little gift bag. And in the gift bag, you know how you're not thinking sometimes, and it had this little pocket knife that was a wrench too. It was about 1.5 inches long. And he said, "What's in your pocket?" And I thought, for a minute there, I thought, oh no, I put that knife in my pocket, which I hadn't, but it just, part of that cognitive bias, I said, "I don't know." And he immediately handcuffs me and puts rubber gloves on and reaches down into my pocket. And he said, "What are these?" And it was my vitamins. I take a vitamin B and a vitamin E and a vitamin D, and I put them in this little baggie in the morning. I said, "Oh, that's my vitamins." And he said, "Okay." And he put them back in my pocket, which was strange to me because if he was going to check that much, he should have checked and seen what the pills were, because he couldn't have known what they were. So it wasn't about what I had in my pocket, evidently. And then he unhandcuffs me. And I'm standing there on 25th Street at Burger King being handcuffed by the city of Cleveland police. And he said, "Well, you ran that stop sign. We've ran your plates now. We're going to give you a warning and let you go." And I still had to use the bathroom. I hadn't even gone in. And they left. And I thought to myself, that's what it feels like. And it's an awful feeling. It is absolutely, unless you've had that happen to you, you have no clue how bad it makes you feel. And I hadn't even done nothing wrong. He didn't even give me a ticket. So I can only imagine if it had been at 12 o'clock at night and I'd have been a black guy trying to walk home, you could have got shot. And I hadn't even done nothing. It wasn't like I was escaping. It wasn't like he had pulled me over and I got out of my car and I was escaping. I was already out of my car walking into the building. So he hadn't pulled me over. Have you ever had that experience?
More than ever. And that's why I say your experiences, I would love to have your experience over my experiences. And that's why I say there's no name calling, not being degraded as a human being.
It's degrading, man.
Hey, I'll take that any day over some of the treatments that we've had.
I can only imagine.
And I say that is because you have to understand that the abuse of power is real. Now, I can't say anything has happened recently in this day and time, but there was time in previous administration that things were really bad. And I can say that they were a lot worse than what they are now. And so that's why I say I'm very fortunate and very, very thankful because at least there's some educational tools in place to at least try to work together. And again, like I sit here and tell you, is everything perfect? Absolutely not. Life is not perfect, but there's some tools in place that at least folks are really willing to listen and to try to work together, which is a start in the right direction. Because again, just who responsibility is it? It's kind of like we were sitting here and we were just saying, just
Well,
literally-
it's to me it's very simple. It's the responsibility of who's in charge of our government right now. I mean, I'm not looking. I mean, I get what you're saying as far as is it's our responsibility to help the homeless and to say something about some injustices, but at the same time, I'm not looking for the guy that's mowing my yard to also stop me for running a stop sign. We are paying for that.
No, I think you misunderstand what I'm saying there. What I was saying was, when I say who responsibility is it, I was stating and saying that when I'm talking about who responsibility is us as a people in holding the leadership accountable to make sure, because after that was done and the way you felt, who else know about it? Who did you talk to say, hey, I'm just concerned.
I called the police station.
And so that's what I'm saying. And so that's what I'm saying is, how many people you think had that opportunity to do that?
I thought about that later. Exactly what you're thinking. I thought,
just think about,
I can at least complain with
you have a voice.
a little bit of credibility.
And that's what I'm getting at.
And maybe if I'd have been
if you weren't who you were and didn't have credibility and didn't have relationships, how do you think that would have came across?
oh God, I guess I'd still be on hold. I don't know.
But that's what I'm getting at to
Yeah.
say to you is that if everything was equal, we all be sitting and being able to do the same thing, and
See-
everybody don't have that.
See, later I've got this friend of mine that knows about all these rules, and he started stating all of these rules, and I'm thinking, I'm just an individual here, building buildings for people. I'm not studied up on, don't search me without a probable. I don't know all that stuff. I don't think we should have to know all the legal rules to be able to not get searched like that. I mean, it was embarrassing. He had a assistant there with her, and she was watching the whole thing. And it was really embarrassing. It was really demeaning. Now, if I had have been drunk driving, if I'd have been ran through a ditch, if I'd have done something like that, if I'd have been threatening, maybe, yeah, there's, if he was going to take me in, need to make sure I don't have anything on me, but I was not. There was no call for that, and there's nobody will ever explain to me that there was any cause for that, and it's not right.
So do you think, let's just say the person in the car was your grandson?
Oh God! Oh Lord! This was a friend of mine that
So that's what I'm
understood,
saying.
and I was still embarrassed.
But I'm saying, just think if that was your grandson.
Oh, well, I was thinking when I left, I thought, if you were 16 years old and that happened to you twice in 2 weeks or something, you'd get jaded, and you'd be scared of the police from now on. I'm still nervous. It's unsettling.
But, and again, I'm saying, I'm taking it there because this was your first experience at 58 years old.
Yeah. Well, it's happened twice, but
Okay, but I'm saying,
yeah.
What I'm getting at is that think about how many others.
Oh, that's what
Go
I'm
through this
saying.
on a regular
That's I'm
That
with
becomes-
I'm with you on that.
So-
So I think maybe that is the biggest hurdle right now. is, and I don't want to say, what do they call that when you stereotype people? What's that word?
Stereotyping with
No, there's another word. What is that word?
discriminating against.
No, there's where you. It starts with a P.
Develop certain perceptions.
Yeah, it's like a profile.
Okay.
When you're profiling people,
Start profiling.
which everybody does that. Obviously a little bit, but I don't know. I don't know the answer, but I do know that there's a problem when that happens, and I'm not sure about the solution, and I'm not sure if I'm paid to have the solution, but
Now, think about it from the officer's standpoint.
I'm with you.
And the only reason I say that is you went to Burger King. And you ran a stop sign by Burger King. You was going in Burger King because you had to go to the bathroom. Mm-hmm. But from that officer perspective, that's also where a lot of drug transactions and everything take place.
All right, he was profiling.
All right. And so at that point,
and you're right, I believe they do have a lot of that.
I was just saying, you're in an area that's pretty much known for a lot of high trafficking of some sort, whether it be drugs, whether it be homeless, whatever goes on in these particular areas. And that type of morning, we don't know the history. I'm just using a scenario to kind of play it out. And you ran through a stop sign, had to go to the restroom, I pull you over and there's something in your pocket you said, I don't really know what's in my pocket. How common is that from a police officer's standpoint? I say, hey, what's in your pocket? It's 8:30 in the morning. Someone says, I don't know what's in my pocket. I think you're being smart.
Isn't that funny? You're taking we're supposed to be just the opposite.
And so the reason I'm sharing that is because, again, just like, and the reason why I say that is because I don't want the narrative to be painted to where that perception and that experience that you have, I want to also, because everybody already feels that way. That's an expectation and feeling that most people already have. So my job, and that's where you say, what about the NAACP? Because I got to also share and help people to get over what happened and help them to understand what can we do different to make sure it doesn't happen.
I appreciate that, and you're right.
Because everybody already has that perception.
You're right.
Because if you that police officer and here's this this white man got out of his car and it's 8:30 in the morning, he gonna tell me he don't know what's in his pocket. He just got dressed. What are you trying to hide? Like, what's suspicious? How often at 8:30 in the morning you just got dressed and you got your clothes on? Somebody say, hey, what's that in your pocket? I don't know what's in my pocket at 8:30 in the morning. How often does that come across? Because typically you're gonna say it's.
All right, but why is he searching me because I ran a stop sign?
Because again, the key to it was, if he said, may I search you? Are you in a hurry? Why are you in a hurry? What are you racing off into? Is there someone inside you? Meeting with, again, we don't know. We don't know what was going on the other side that may have been taking place the day before, or what complaints do we have about what's going on?
I don't believe that we can give people the right to search us because they think.
And I agree.
It's just,
so what can we have done different? That's a question that we can have with that police officer, with the chief, and says, hey, what can we have done different? What could we have said to make that officer feel at ease that he didn't feel the need or she didn't feel the need to search me? What can we have done different?
I believe if it was an experienced person, I believe maybe don't have enough money to properly fund for. If you stop me, you said, hey man, you ran that stop sign. I need to give you a ticket here. Stay here while I run your tags.
So now you and I are thinking like we live in 1970. In 2024, Burger King is right off the interstate. And all the things that's going on in this section of town, it'd be interesting to see the 911 call log on all the things going on in that area.
It'd be interesting. In fact, that's where he was sitting. That's where he was staked out at.
But you understand what
Yeah.
I'm saying? So that's why I'm saying is I'm changing the narrative at this junction because in this particular situation, let's just say this you're a black man that came to me and this happened to you and this is what I'm being challenged because this is a complaint that came into the NAACP because they felt like they were discriminated against because this person.
Oh, so y'all get some of that.
We get all
Well,
of
that's
that.
good. That's
so,
good.
So what I'm saying to you is like all of these are issues or concerns that NAACP have to deal with. Whether I went to the hospital and they wouldn't see me, whether the police pulled me over and didn't do anything wrong and mistreated me, whether I don't care, whatever you can possibly think that anybody complain about, they go to the NAACP. And
So this
again,
is, yeah, I can see that. Who else would they call?
So, and I say that is because when people feel like they don't have a voice, you have to be that voice and have to become the conscience of the community. And I tell people all this: we're the conscience of the nation.
And what else could they have done? I'm not exactly sure.
Well,
Other than,
so here's the thing: what gives people some sort of sense of justice is being heard. Because a lot of time, all people want to do is be heard. Because if you went back and he says, hey, Mr. Burris, let me follow back up with this officer and I want to get back with you. If he called you into his office and had that officer that pulled you over and you found out, hey, this officer had somebody just slapped the officer the day before because they didn't handcuff him and got smart with him or this, that, et cetera, you'll be a little bit more sympathetic to the situation.
I would.
So that's why I'm saying is my job is making sure that we play on the same playing field, that we try to get everybody to understand. Again, is it right or is it wrong? That's not what we're talking about here. All we're talking about is how do we find a commonality to sit down and have conversation to get a better understanding of what really took place.
And you know, there's really not a group that works directly with them to say, hey, you know what? Maybe let's not do this for a while and see how that works. Of course, they're going to say, well, we asked you if you could search us and said yes. If you just said no, they had 15 cars there. I've had them stop me before, and the narrative doesn't come out like they said it did. So I don't know that. I don't know the answer, but I do know the feeling. And I know it's not good.
Well, that's why I say what could be done different. And this is an educational moment. You can use your platform as an educational moment to have that conversation and show, because I guarantee you that
I think individual rights and privacy and that it should not be sacrificed for that, because you know, he's the one standing there being armed and in the car and all that, or, you know, all that stuff. I don't think that just because you can use safety forever, you can say, I need to go out here to the mall and search everybody at the mall because somebody might have a bomb because they had one time. So that would be under the safety and make sense,
so
but
that's abuse. There's a difference now. That would be abuse. So what I'm getting at is the difference on what I was saying is that, again, every situation is different. And I say that is because I'm agreeing with you. I don't want my personal rights to be violated in any way, shape, or form. But I'm also saying that I want to make sure that we understand the full totality of all the things that are taking place so we can have a better understanding.
and you're right. I agree with you.
Because right now, all we're dealing with is how you felt and your perception. Because we haven't got any other information at the table. So only thing I can understand is
All we have is what was happening.
what happened to you and how you felt. I have no information. That's all I have. So I can't form a good opinion about what took place. I can offer different suggestions.
So what might have happened prior might have led to that.
Correct.
But how does that have to do with me? We could go on with that forever.
But the thing about it is it would help you to better understand what took place. Because see, right now, you still feel unjust. But what make you appreciate certain things, and I give you a prime example is because let's just say you got a rash of burglaries going on in your neighborhood, all right? And then all of a sudden, you're getting teed off because why the police can't catch these people? What are they doing wrong? And then, of course, you want something done. It goes back to what I was telling you earlier. Until something happens to us personally, it's not a problem. And that's what I keep saying, is that until people become their brother's keeper, start taking care of one another for real, being innocent. Because at that same point, if you'd have seen that, let's just say it happened to a black man and he was getting handcuffed from against the car, and he was in the exact situation that you were in, and you pulled up in the parking lot, you'd have walked in and ordered your food, and you'd have left.
What could I do? They'll Terry search me.
No, but the point that I'm making is, if you felt just like how you felt unjust and how you felt the police officer done you wrong, who's saying anything? Who's questioning to find out what's going on? Are we being our brother's keeper? It's not none of my business. That happened to them. I got to go. I got something going on.
They may turn on me too.
Everybody is turned a blind eye, and it just takes care of me and mine. Nobody is being their brother's keeper. What you have said now, and I'm changing another scenario. Say, for instance, it had been somebody you know, and they were handcuffed. He said, well, John, what's going on? What are you doing? You'd have said something, correct?
I just said something.
That's the point that I'm making. It's because until it affects something or someone that belongs or that we have a relationship with, it don't really care.
But anytime I see somebody handcuffed, I'll know now they might have just.
But that's what I'm
Run a
getting at, is
stop
that
sign.
you have a different perception because of what happened to you. And that's what I'm saying is that's what I'm trying to explain to our society, is I want everybody to understand exactly what you felt and what you went through. Now understand that these folks over here have been doing this their entire lives. And now you got that experience. Now help navigate the waters, make it a good playing field so we all understand and all have a better way of communicating. I can tell you, I think Chief Gibson is probably one of the best chief of police that I've ever met.
I would agree with you. We've always had good chief of police.
Chief Gibson, I can tell you, I feel is one of the better police chiefs that I've ever met. And I say that, and I'm saying that because, again, being open and transparent to the community. Now, is there some things that probably could be done different? Absolutely. But what I'm saying to you is I'm always give credit to if you're willing to sit down to the table and we can try to work together. Is everybody going to be happy at the end? Probably not. But at least we're trying. The effort means a lot. But just to close the door and say, this is the way it is and it's never going to be a different way, that's not really working together. Now we at odds with each other. Now something's got to be done. We got to break down these barriers. My job then is hold you more accountable and find out what you're hiding. Why can't we talk? You report to the people. Now I got to be that advocate to hold you accountable and bring whatever attention I need to the situation to make sure that it get resolved correctly.
You'd think as a society, after this long of being around, that we'd work through this stuff. But I guess this is going to go on forever, all these.
I always told someone when I said, I wish one day we never had to have the NAACP. And a gentleman told me, God bless his soul, he said, son, the NAACP will always be needed. He said, they'll never change. And I said, who's they? He said, this world will never change.
It's human nature, I guess, right?
So let's say the things we've learned and the things we've seen. And I don't know if you know Franklin McCauley. He's the son of the founder of McCauley High School in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And Franklin came up here and spoke to us one time. And he had a wonderful message. And one of the things that resonated with me is because he was very transparent. And he said all his life, he grew up, he heard the N-word. He knew that, blacks wasn't welcome to his home. He knew all these things. And so when he first went off to college and met some folks, and one of the persons he's gravitated towards that looked out for him that he came real close to was this black guy. and became real good friends with this black guy. And as his dad, if he can bring him home or what have you, wasn't welcome. And it really hurt him. And so when I say for him, and it goes on a little deeper, but for him, that was a life-changing moment for him to say, I don't want to go this route. I want to do something different. So he had a strange relationship with his family, with his dad primarily, because again, he didn't think that he chose not to live like he was raised to be. And that's what I'm saying, that I'm telling you that we all, is just like me growing up. I knew growing up in the inner cities, never trust a white man. Never, no. That don't mean you're no good. That's the way it was taught at that time when I was at that age growing up in the inner cities. Because all they ever seen was that these people were bad. They were bad people. And that's the way you were raised. Until you leave that environment and grow up out of that element to see things differently and meet other people, then you see a different side. But I keep telling people we're conditioned because of how we were raised and what we're taught. That's why it's so disturbing when people talk about, I don't want these books taught in the school system. I don't want this taught. Forever and a decade, it was never no problem teaching about certain histories until you start telling the truth about certain histories. And that's why the world is so unrest. Because we only want to tell one truth, and that's the truth of that person. But we don't want to tell the entire truth of every individual.
They say that history is written by the victor.
That's correct.
Makes you wonder about all history, doesn't it? A little bit.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, you gotta wonder.
Absolutely. So and I tell people this all the time, is because no different for Black History Month, and everybody wants to talk about all the different things that a lot of Black folks have done in the history of this country and things like that. It's not common knowledge. Nobody knows what. Do you realize, and I say this all the time, that through slavery, and you know, like I know, that when it comes down to the laborers are the ones that's going to come up with the better ideas and an easier way to do things.
Always. Always.
They may not necessarily get the credit.
Necessity's the mother of invention. What about Harry Johnson? He's one of my best friends. You know Harry?
Harry was the first president of the NAACP.
Is that right?
He was part of the founding group that started the NAACP in 1969 here in Bradley County, Tennessee.
I go down there sometime to eat lunch with him.
First president. first president.
Is he still working, or is he pretty well retired? I think he's pretty well retired now, right?
He's retired, pretty much.
But isn't he down there a lot?
He's still there.
They got him in the back now.
He's still in there. He still helps out, still comes in, still helps out. Still.
His daughter's sort of taken over, Demetrius.
Demetrius, the executive director. I think it's,
Well, he's smart.
Yeah. So that's why I say, again, passing the torch. What did Harry do? He was one of the, I was just telling you how he was one of the founders. And he was the founder, one of the first president of the NAACP here in Bradley County. And so a man of his status and his influence and being engaged and involved in 1969 when it first was founded here in Bradley County. Think about all the things he was exposed to and all the things that he went through.
Yeah. He grew up over on Galt Street, I think.
And think about the job opportunities he were denied because of his involvement. Think about all the things that him and his family had to go through during that time because he was working against the status quo. Because in 1969, that was... It was
different. I think his mother... Did his mother bring him here because they were coming from somewhere? And I think that was City Commissioner Andrew's brother. What's his name?
Avery.
Avery, yeah. I couldn't think of his name.
No, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think his mother brought them here and opened up a restaurant on Inman Street.
Okay.
Describe me your normal day.
I work for Salinas, which is originally I was hired in under Olin. We split and it became Olin and Arch. Then Arch became Lanza. Then Lanza became Innovative Water Care. Innovative Water Care became Segura, and now it's turned to Salinas.
Golly,
So for 26 years, I've had those.
26 years.
I've had those those are the 5 different organizations I work for.
That's a good job, isn't it?
I love it. Love it. So
5 days a week?
yes. So originally I was one of the shift supervisors, and here recently I'm on a special assignment in a different role and working on process improvement, process packaging improvement for the process. And so been doing that for the last couple of months. And so just getting my feet wet, learning something new. But primarily Monday through Friday, and evenings, always between the 100 Black Men and the NAACP. My hands are always filled. Friday mornings, I'm out to Cleveland Middle School every Friday morning, mentoring to the middle school students out there. Throughout the week, we pick certain days to go out to the different high schools to make an appearance, to make sure fellowship and network and work with them. And of course, second and fourth Mondays, city council meetings and school board meetings.
You go to the
Monday.
city council meetings a lot?
Yeah, I don't attend every meeting, but I try to appear.
Is that, what about Saturdays and Sundays?
No days off. I just told you yesterday, I had a host for the state. We had a bi-monthly meeting here at Cleveland State. And then today, I've got different interviews, try to go to church, try to get involved,
Things are busy, aren't they?
And so that's why, as I was sharing, like for me, I'm very protective of my time. And I can tell you, this is probably the first interview that I've ever done in my lifetime. And I say that is because, again, I'm very protective of time, and I try to make sure that whatever I do, that have my work-life balance.
I'll tell you what, you I'm sure feel comfortable with you being in that position, because you're really, there must have been a reason why you was president for so many years.
Yes. I tell people, I get, it's just like all of us, we say, we're going to give this up. We're not going to do this anymore. I'm going to give it up. And you get discouraged. And then someone always remind me, Galatians 6:9, let's not grow weary in time. And I always tell people, I said, I'm growing weary. They said, but let's not grow weary, because in due time we will reap a harvest. And that's what I keep seeing. All these accomplishments are being made throughout the way. And I keep saying, it's getting better.
It's inch by inch, isn't it?
If you're looking for major progress overnight, it's never going to happen. You have to understand that every day you get to wake up, it's an opportunity to make a difference.
Does Kesman cook?
All the time.
Where's he cook, at the house?
All the time, everywhere, anywhere you want him to cook. He loves cooking.
He won like several awards.
Oh yeah, he loves cooking.
Is there anywhere you can go and eat his food?
Now he has to cook for you. Now he don't want to be locked down. Now he's a person that you're not going to get him in a restaurant or anything like that. He loves to cook, but he likes to cook when he wants to cook.
He's such a nice guy. I really like him.
Awesome. Very blessed. Very talented, very blessed young man. And I say to people all the time, be a good steward and good things that happen to you. And he's definitely a good steward.
Well, Lawrence, I really appreciate you coming.
But,
is there anything that I can do to help?
Well, keep doing what you're doing. Sharing, being open-minded, share the message, and don't become like most media circuits. And I say that is because just deliver the truth. Whether anybody accepts it or not, that's beside the point. Whatever the truth is, share the truth.
And keep moving forward, right?
Keep moving forward. But
let me ask you this. Who is your hero?
To be honest with you, my hero is me. When I look in the mirror every day, I look and say, thank you, Lord, for blessing me with another day. Make me the best man that I can possibly be. Help me to lead by example. Let my walk match my talk.
I appreciate you coming.
Thank you
I
very
really
much.
do.